I hitchhiked alone for 3 weeks in the Balkans this summer. Being a girl can be risky, but the drivers I encountered were super nice, and some of them even bought me food and water. Everyone was concerned about my safety, but I was fearless and confident. This incident happened on the last day of my trip. Before I start my story, I feel I need to defend hitchhiking. It is overall not as dangerous as some people think. I got 22 rides total in my trip, and just one went wrong. I don't mean to discourage anybody, especially girls, from hitchhiking because it is an amazing experience. I, myself, should have been more careful anyways. I feel bad for providing people with another hitchhiking gone wrong story. While there are so many beautiful ones, I plan on writing everything in a blog, so if you are interested, I can post it in the comments when I finish. So I had already hitchhiked successfully through 5 countries, but I had a bad feeling this morning while walking to a gas station outside of a little town. I started asking couples and families if they were going in my direction, but I was unlucky, so I decided to raise my thumb like I usually did the last weeks. Immediately, a guy stops and asks for sex. I refuse, but he stays 5 minutes trying to convince me. The minute he leaves, another car stops with 2 guys inside. They don't ask for sex, but they look at me in the worst way possible, so I refuse the ride. After 1 minute, a red van stops. The guy is young and good-looking, with a nice smile. He looks trustworthy enough. I jump in the van. The first 30 minutes, we make some small talk and things are looking good, but then he starts talking about sex. What is wrong with men in this place? I asked him to stop because I was feeling uncomfortable. He called me a cold woman and said I should relax. He started talking about how hot I am and that his dick is going to explode. I asked him again in my most serious way not to talk about his dick. I explained to him I am not a prostitute and I am not exchanging rides for sex, so if he's not okay with this, he can leave me here. He looks serious and he says that he will take me to my destination. Awkward silence for 10 minutes. Then he says, "Say something, I picked you up to entertain me." I am thinking this ride is not good at all. We stop in a place to eat. I am seriously thinking to stay here and get another ride, but I look around and the place is full of men, not one woman, and all of them are looking at me like they want to rape me, so I decide to stay with the driver. He looks more serious now. Maybe he will be okay. We get back in the car, and after 5 minutes driving, he tries to convince me to go to this eco-village only 5 kilometers from here. I refuse multiple times, but he makes the turn anyways. I am very angry and scared. We take a small mountain road. There are indeed signs for this eco-village. I am thinking I can get another ride from there. We drive to this eco-village, but he doesn't stop. He keeps driving. This is the limit for me. I grab my backpack, always keep your stuff with you, and I open the door. I jump out of the van. He keeps driving. I know he will make a turn and come back. I have to find a safe place. There's a woman working on a field. I go and stand in front of her. Indeed, he appears again, driving to the highway where we were before. He stops the car for a few seconds and then keeps going. I realize I am still in danger, but at least I'm out of that pervert's car. I start walking, my hands were shaking, and I arrive at the eco-village. I am thinking that these people can help me, maybe give me a lift to the highway, because this guy could be waiting for me anywhere and the road is mostly empty. I enter the village and go directly to the toilet. Before I enter, a woman stops me and she politely asks if I pay for the entrance. I tell her I really need to use the toilet first. I am almost crying. She agrees. I enter the toilet and I am crying in shock. I try to relax, but it's hard. I go out of the toilet and this woman is waiting for me. I try to explain to her what happens, but I start crying again. She looks concerned. She brings me to her boss. It is a 50-year-old woman and she looks like a mother figure, like a fellow woman in this world, happy to help. I try to explain to her what happened while crying. She also looks concerned. She invites me into her bungalow, the out from the back door. At this moment, she tells me something like, "Call the police, darling, you are not welcome here," before she slams the door in my face. I can't believe what just happened. I want to shout at her tomorrow, it could be her or her daughter in my place, that she is a mean person, and if this guy is waiting for me, she will be responsible for my rape, but instead I keep crying while exiting the village. I start walking these 5 terrifying kilometers in this empty road. There is a man loading his car with children around him. I approach him begging for a lift to the highway, but he just tells me to walk. I think of calling the police, but I don't know the number, and I don't trust them anyways, but looking back, that's what I should have done. I kept walking and walking, trying to calm down. Sometimes there was a house with a couple of people outside, other times there was nobody, and I was shitting my pants. Luckily, no sight of the red van. I finally made it to the highway. Now I am crying because of relief. There is a bus stop. I am so lucky. The bus comes after 1 hour. I spent my emergency money for a ticket and I arrived safely to my destination. I hitchhiked very carefully one more time after this incident. I think I need some time to feel comfortable on the road again, but I can't simply forget how beautiful hitchhiking can be most of the time. Pervert driver, let's not meet again. Village hypocrites, I will find you on TripAdvisor and I will ruin you. I don't know how to start this, so I'll go with the obvious question everyone is always asking. I'm a 21-year-old female. I'm 5'4", and this has been going on for a span of 6 years now. It started when I was 15. The way I look hasn't changed much since I was 14 because I hit a growth spurt and then it abruptly stopped, so I'm frequently mistaken for a teenager. I live really far out in the boonies, in a small northwest town on the end of a peninsula. I wouldn't call this area high in crime because it is a small town with only 2 actual officers on duty at a time within a 30-mile radius. There are times when shady people gravitate in this direction. For example, of the crimes in this area, my poor neighbor rented her house to someone who grew a shit ton of marijuana in the basement before it was legal to even carry a small amount, and let their dogs destroy the walls and doors. The police busted a crack dealer down the street adjacent to ours, and of the 6 people who lived on my street, 3 of them had been robbed, and there's frequently things left down there that nobody wants to take to a dump. A burned down school bus one summer, an open backpack, and this summer, a couch. So maybe it's not the safest town in America, but it's not the worst. I lived on the last street before the end of the peninsula. Past our street is an area called the Devil's Head, with a few suburban houses close to the street, a residential farm, and the street meets at the end, then loops. One summer, I was 15 and I had lost my horse. Yes, I own a horse. We would sometimes let him out on our 10-acre property to roam and eat grass. We were surrounded by trees and our driveway was always blocked off by a gate. Today we couldn't find him anywhere on our property, and we knew he had found a way out and he was roaming the streets. We figured he hadn't gone far and went out in search. I went on foot down to Devil's Head while my mom took the car out in the streets. In traditional Washington fashion, it was raining and a little stormy. I put on a coat, pulled it over my hair, my hands in my pocket, and headed down Devil's Head, calling it my horse's name. I made it to the end of Devil's Head and circled back with no luck. I was on my way to my street to see if my mom had found him when a guy who had been standing in the yard in this yellow house saw me, left his yard, and started walking in my direction. He stopped calling me in front of his house and said, "Hi, my name is David." I introduced myself and tried to be as polite as possible while trying to maintain my distance, being that I was a 15-year-old girl alone in this desolate stretch of the road with a stranger. I just told him I was looking for my horse and asked if he had seen him around. David said, "Oh, yeah, I did see a horse that looked like that," when I described him. He started pointing out where he had seen my horse and said, "Oh yeah, he walked that way, down that way." Then he started asking if my parents were looking too. I told him my mom was out on the street looking. He asked where I live and I told him the street I came from. It didn't occur to me that answering any of his questions would be a bad decision. He kept pushing more questions about my parents and where they were, and during this conversation he was getting closer to me. I hate my space bubble getting popped by people I don't know, and this guy was closing in fast. My imaginary space bubble is big enough so people can reach out and touch me there too close. He had just about reached my little imaginary bubble when I said, "Well, I better keep looking," and headed off. Thinking that was the end of it, I turned my back to him and was heading up the street when I noticed he was following me. He continued to talk to me and stay behind me throughout, and at this point I realized the situation wasn't okay. He took a few steps behind me, and if I recalled, he was asking more questions about myself. I put my hands in my pockets and my head down and pretended not to hear him. He noticed and said something along the lines of, "Oh, you're pretending not to hear me? That's okay," and carried on a conversation with himself. I think I pissed him off a little, but it scared me that he didn't just leave when he saw that I wouldn't talk to him. Finally, I was wondering if David was going to follow me down my street or if I should run. He turned into someone else's driveway and left me alone. I don't know why he turned into someone else's private driveway. I knew that wasn't his house I saw him coming from, but I didn't know why he changed his mind or what had made him stop. But I hurried home and told my mom. She told me she had found my horse down the street somewhere in the middle, munching on grass, and she'd taken him home. So David never saw my horse down by his house because he had never left our street. She told me I should have told David that I was going to meet her at the end of Devil's Head. I didn't understand then, but I do now. For the next couple of weeks, people told me they saw a guy walking down my street at random intervals during the day, that they thought it was David. I liked taking walks down there because it was almost always empty and peaceful. I stopped taking walks completely for a long time. I went walking down the road with my friends and sister after some time, and since we were teenagers, we liked exploring. One day we went down to an area we had never been before. About a quarter of a mile down the street, there is a little trail to a river that leads into the woods. We decided to take a look. We went down and discovered a sleeping bag and an empty grocery bag and a candy wrapper. We were caught up in the excitement of our discovery and made jokes about the crazy things we had found. Not that it was that crazy, but I was secretly kind of scared. One day my mom told me her and a friend found a man sleeping in a trash can in my neighbor's house who introduced himself as David, so any doubts I had as to who it was were gone. That was the last time I heard about David for a long time. I went back to taking walks down my street, and I was glad I didn't have to worry about it anymore. I hate feeling weak or like I needed a big burly guy with me everywhere, so I was really grateful and thought it was just some harmless homeless guy, and he's gone forever now, so who cares? 5 years later, David came back. As I said before, I'm 21 years old now. I live with my 23-year-old brother and my 17-year-old sister at my mom's house. She lives across the street with my stepdad since she goes back and forth to the houses ever so often. We built a little gate between the properties so we can take a walk back and forth quicker. That day my stepdad was down at the marina with his boat. Me and my sister were going to the grocery store and my mom was at our house getting a few things down and getting ready to head back over. I was getting in the car with my sister and we were heading out of the driveway when we saw something really weird. At first I thought it was a raccoon or a dead animal laying on the side of the road. I drove really slowly and inched right to get closer to it. Lying almost directly in front of my dad's duplex, only a few feet from his garage in the middle of the street, was a man. I moved to the right and got closer and the man sat up. I could see that it was David, laying there in the middle of the street, as if casually taking a nap or possibly waiting for something. He laid back down and we sat there pondering what the hell to do for a long time. Finally, we decided to call my mom and let her know what was going on. She decided not to walk across the street right away by herself. I ended up calling my stepdad to tell him there was a dude sleeping in front of his house. I think by the time he got home, David was gone. I've seen David a few times while driving to and from work, usually walking on the side of the road looking really out of it or hitchhiking. Whenever I pass him, I swear to God he stops and stares at me until I'm out of sight. I thought I was imagining it at first. I saw him by the library about 20 minutes from my house one day and he looked directly at me and smiled. I saw him again a different day about 10 minutes away from the marina in my town. He turned his head when he saw me pass and smiled again, staring me dead on until I was out of eyesight. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, and it didn't matter if he was even, because he was a creep. Because I didn't let strangers into my car or stop for hitchhikers because I'm a girl and I usually drive alone. What happened next is what caused me to write this, and I know you guys don't like silly stories about teenagers who think someone might look at them funny, but you do trust me when I say I wouldn't be writing this if I didn't feel like I might be in trouble, so just give me the benefit of a doubt. I was in my car on my way to work when I got to the stop sign at the end of our street. I looked both ways and didn't see any cars, so I started pulling out to the left. It took me about a split second to see him. He was just standing beneath some trees, sticking his thumb out trying to hitch a ride. I hadn't seen him at first because he was standing in the shade. I looked at his face and noticed who it was. I made eye contact only for a brief second, but when I did, I could see he had the most sadistic expression on his face. You know how in cartoons the villains are always smiling with their eyes narrowed when they're planning some big heist or about to laugh maniacally? I don't know if this guy's eyebrows were always stuck downwards like this or something, but his eyes were narrowed and he was fucking smiling at me with his mouth half open in the most twisted expression I had ever seen. Basically, if you've ever seen Dragon Ball Z, imagine the expression Vegeta wears when he starts to beat someone to death on a bald, greasy 40-year-old man sticking his thumb out in the road, standing not a foot away from you. I was at a complete stop, and he was standing in the road, not to the side. I don't know if he moved farther out when he saw my car and was convinced I'd give him a ride, or if he was already that close, but by the time I started turning, I realized he was close enough to reach out and open my car door if he had a mind to. In a few seconds that I looked at him, he looked me dead on and raised both eyebrows up and down again. I don't think there's a word for it, but I think you'll know what I mean if I say it's the kind of gesture some people call the bedroom eyes, with his mouth still half open. He was so far out on the side of the road that I had been driving in the wrong lane partially to avoid him. There was no traffic or cars for miles. It's quite common out here to do that to avoid bikers or people walking on the side of the street. I look in my rearview mirror and the guy was turning around and staring me dead on and watched me drive off wearing the same fucking creepy expression and smiling at me. It made me so nervous that in my paranoia, I pulled over about 10 minutes up the road and texted my mom and sister not to go walking around the streets alone and to keep the dogs in. I know I'm probably just being paranoid, but I've never had anyone look at me with an expression like that, but I am desperately seeking advice from the Let's Not Meet community, because I know you guys know how it feels to have someone suddenly make your life unsafe. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but it doesn't feel right. I hate David and I wish to hell that he would go as far away from me and my family as possible. I just don't know what to do. I just know I don't feel safe anymore when he's around.